Everyone says the West breaks men beyond repair, but we know the truth cuts deeper and sometimes kinder. Today is the story of Eamon Pike, where loss became backbone and grief learned how to stand. Out on a scorched stretch of frontier, everything began with one small act opening a door he swore would stay shut forever. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I remember fire not the kind meant to chase the cold from your bones, but the kind that devours everything you own and seems to grin while it does. The torch arced through the dark like a curse spoken aloud, dropped into the hay, and the barn went up in a roar. Harlan Voss sat his horse easy smiling like a man who'd just cleaned a table at cards, then turned and disappeared into the dusk as my blood soaked the dirt. I should have died that night. Maybe part of me did, but 3 Cheyenne women refused to let what was left of me slip away. Ever had strangers arrive and upend your whole life? I don't mean a little everything. The quiet you built, the grief you learned to live inside, the walls you stacked brick by brick to keep the world from touching you. That's what broke. One morning they were on my porch, 3 sisters with braids tight and eyes worn by too much living, and before the sun fell again, I was bleeding out, while flames crawled over the last place I could call home. Some days I still ask myself if I chose right, whether opening the door was deliverance or just another road to pain. But this I know that night, with Skea's hands pressed to my wound, and fire hemming us in something I thought I'd buried with my wife, stirred awake. I felt alive. 2 years before that blaze, I put Elise Pike in the ground, her and the child who never drew breath side by side beneath a cottonwood I'd planted the day we wed. The earth was iron hard that November, frost biting early every shovel of dirt like tearing out a piece of my chest. When I packed the last mound smooth, I swore an oath to myself. No more. No more hope. No more love. No more letting the world get close enough to cut me. Just work. Whiskey when I had the coin, and the hush of a prairie that didn't care if I lived or died. I kept that vow for 730 days, counted them. Then they came, and the morning fell quiet. Too quiet, the kind that warns a storm's on the way. My hand went to the Winchester before my mind caught up. Some old instinct telling me the balance had shifted. I moved to the window and saw them. 3 women seated on my porch, still as if chiseled from rock. Cheyenne clear from their dress and the way they wore their hair. Waiting. I took the rifle and stepped outside. The door groaned loud enough to wake ghosts, and all 3 turned as one. Sisters. You could see it plain shared bones, straight backs, the same set to the jaw. The eldest stood. Not tall, but she held herself like she could face down a ridge line. What do you want? My voice scraped out of me. I hadn't used it for anything but swearing at fence posts in weeks. She answered in careful English. I'm Skaya. These are my sisters Mire and Tova. We came from our Cheyenne camp. 2 days' travel. This is my land, I said, tightening my grip on the rifle. Move along. We were sent to you. She hesitated. Something passed through her eyes, not fear, but a kind of waiting, as if she carried a weight too heavy to set down. The Cheyenne Council says you have until sundown to choose one of us as your wife. I laughed, couldn't stop it. The sound came out sharp and bitter, like glass snapping in the cold. That was the wildest thing I'd ever heard. I'm not looking for a wife, I said. Never have. Never will. You should go. The middle sister, Myra, spoke, then her tone gentle but unshakable. We can't leave. Skaya met my stare, and what I saw there cut deeper than steel. If you turn us away, our end will be worse than living with a man who doesn't want us. You could call that pressure. Maybe it was, but I'd spent too many years alone to confuse a lie with plain desperation. They weren't bargaining. They were cornered, caught between bad paths and worse ones, and somehow I'd become the least cruel choice. "Get inside," I heard myself say. "But don't mistake this for an invitation to stay." They passed me, steps quiet on the scarred planks. The cabin shrank at once, filled with their presence and the questions I refused to voice. I kept busy at the stove, bacon snapping in the pan, though I could feel them behind me. Feel their eyes. I expected silence, maybe them huddled together like spooked birds. That isn't what happened. Skaya took my broom and began to sweep her movements, calm and deliberate, almost reverent. It wasn't submission. It was something else staking ground. Mireille lifted a shirt I'd meant to mend for months. Needle flashed. Her hands were quick practiced. And Tova, the youngest, watched me through the window as I split wood outside, curiosity wrestling fear in her dark eyes. By noon, the sun was merciless. I hauled water from the well rope, biting my palms, drank until my chest eased. Mira stepped out with 3 tin cups, her look asking without words. I stalled. Every kindness pulled me deeper into whatever trouble this was, but I couldn't deny them water under that brutal sky. When I passed her a cup, our fingers brushed just a breath of contact enough to feel her warmth, the calluses like my own. She gave a small nod and carried the water back to her sisters. I retreated to the barn. I needed space, the old ache of being alone. But solitude was already gone. Their presence had split it open, and I had no idea how to close it again. The afternoon bled away shadows, stretching long across the grass. Inside, Skaya stood at the stove stirring a pot she'd made from what little I had. Firelight traced her profile, the curve of her neck where her braid lay heavy. I caught myself watching, then looked away, guilt flaring sharp. Elise Pike was always there, not haunting, just there, like she stood just behind me witnessing everything. "You haven't eaten," Skaya said, steady as stone. "A man can't live on work alone." I didn't answer, but I sat. The chair complained under my weight. She set a plate down, her fingers brushing mine again. That small touch sent a jolt through my arm, and when I looked up, her eyes held mine. Something moved between us, bare, unspoken, dangerous. The cabin felt tighter, the air thicker. I stood too fast, the chair scraping loud. "I've got to check the fence." I muttered an excuse so thin I didn't fool myself. I reached the corral before Skaya caught up to me. I heard her steps in the dirt, then her voice calm and certain. "You run from what you feel." It wasn't an accusation, just the truth. I turned on her. "You don't know me." She came closer anyway, unafraid. "I know a man chased by a ghost." Damn her, she was right. We stood too near now. I could feel the heat of her breath, see the steady thrum at her throat. My hand moved without permission. My fingers traced her jaw. Her skin was warm, alive beneath my touch. She didn't flinch. Her lips parted, and I leaned in the world, narrowing to her mouth, the line of her neck. Then a howl tore through the air, long, sharp, wild as a wolf's cry. It sent ice through my blood. Skaya stiffened, every muscle alert. "He's close," she whispered, fist clenched like she was holding on to fate. I snatched up my rifle, sweeping the prairie as dusk bled in. Nothing showed, but the air felt wrong. Watched. We hurried back to the cabin, her sisters closing in around us. Mira spoke, her voice low and steady. "Harlan Voss came to our lands. What your people left us. He wants the water, the timber, and a wife to claim it." Her eyes flicked to Skaya. "He chose her." My gut tightened. I'd heard the name Harlan Voss. Everyone had. A man with a tin star stolen or bought who used it to take whatever he pleased. The Cheyenne Council saw what he was, Mira went on. They sent us to you. A man with a deed, a name. Your law might shield us where ours cannot. The truth settled heavy on my shoulders. These women weren't trespassers. They were sacrifices offered to trade one fate for another, hoping a piece of paper and a white man's name might slow a predator. Skaya met my eyes, her strength a quiet burn. We're buying time, she said. Time for him to hunt easier prey. Tova's voice trembled, but her chin stayed lifted. He won't stop. Not until he takes what he wants. Funny thing is, I'd spent 2 years stacking walls, keeping the world out, guarding what little was left of my shattered heart. And here were 3 strangers asking me to tear it all down, to step into a fight that wasn't mine, to risk everything for people I'd known less than a day. I looked at them, Skaya's resolve, Mira's quiet knowing, Tova's fierce fear, a family with me as their only cover. The sun sagged low, the sky bleeding red as night crept close. Stay inside when they come, I said, checking my Winchester. No matter what happens, don't step out until it's done. Skaya's hand caught my arm. We stand with you. I started to protest, but the look in her eyes shut me up. These weren't women who'd hide while someone else bled for them. They were Cheyenne fighters in their own right, guns or no. Then stay low, I said, and be ready. The sky bled red as 4 riders crested the horizon, dust boiling up behind them like smoke from a brush fire. Harlan Voss rode at the front coat, snapping in the wind, his face set hard as stone. The Voss outfit fanned out hands hovering near their guns, eyes crawling over my ranch as if it already belonged to them. I stood on the porch with the Winchester braced across my chest, every muscle wound tight. Behind me I heard Skaya shift, felt her steady presence at my back. Mira held a hatchet low and ready. Tova gripped a shovel like it was a cavalry blade. You should have stayed inside, I said without turning. We stand together. Skaya answered, calm as iron, or we fall together. No arguing with that. Voss reined in a dozen yards out, a cruel smile cutting across his face. Well, now he drawled, looks like you've got company. His eyes found Skaya slid over her in a way that made my blood burn. Those are my property, he said. Hand them over and you can crawl back to your lonely grave. They're not property, I said, keeping my voice level while the anger climbed. They're my guests, and you're standing on my land. He laughed sharp as breaking glass. Your land, I've got papers that say otherwise, rights to their water, their timber, and one of those pretty things for a wife. He spat in the dirt. You're just a fool in my way. I stepped forward, rifle still across my chest, ready to drop and fire in a blink. Wave your papers all you want. You're nothing but a thief wearing a stolen badge. These women are under my protection. Ride out now or you won't ride at all. His grin thinned, his hand twitching toward leather. You'll bleed for this, he hissed. You and your say it again I cut in and I'll put you in the ground. The air split with a shot. One of his men fired the round, chewing into a crate stacked for cover. I dropped and answered back, the Winchester bucking in my hands. That was it. A real gunfight isn't like the dime novels. Time stretches thin, your heart slams so hard you taste metal. One bad move, and you're dead or dying in the dust. I knew every inch of my place, every post and shadow. I used it staying low, reloading, fast-firing just enough to keep them pinned. Skaya crouched beside me, feeding cartridges with steady hands as lead tore the air. Mira watched the flank's hatchet poised. Tova's eyes flicked everywhere, tracking motion. A bullet kissed my side, hot, blinding blood spreading through my shirt. I stayed up. Had to. One of Voss's men caught a round, grabbed his arm, and fell back screaming. Then Harlan Voss drew a torch. He struck a match, slow the flame painting his face in hell light. If I can't have them, he snarled, neither will you. He hurled the torch into the barn. Dry hay caught at once, fire racing up the walls, devouring everything. No, I lurched forward, but Voss was already turning away, his laughter carrying as he and his riders vanished into the dusk. The barn burned, my barn, where Elise Pike and I had survived our first winter, where I'd stacked every hope I had. Flames took it all. My legs gave out. Blood soaked my shirt, the wound in my side a white-hot brand as I hit the dirt. Skoya was there when my legs buckled, catching me as I went down. She tore her scarf free and pressed it hard to my side. "Hold on," she whispered, fear sharp in her voice, braided with something deeper. Her hands shook, but they stayed sure against my skin. Her eyes locked onto mine, fierce enough to haul me back from the brink. I wanted to say it was finished, that we'd lost. But Mire's voice cut through the roar as the barn burned. Tova was already sprinting for the buckets. Skaya hauled me upright. "We saved this place," she said, steady as rock. "And damn if they didn't fight that fire like warriors." I swung wet sacks at the flames, every motion a spike of pain blood sliding down my side. Mira chopped at burning timbers, shaping fire breaks with knowledge passed down from her grandmother, each move exact. Tova hauled water until her hands went raw, her small frame blazing with purpose. Skaya led, driving the blaze back, every swing proof of her strength. The fire clawed and lunged, threatening the cabin, threatening to take it all. Hours smeared together, smoke, choking heat, blistering pain, never letting go. But Mira's break held. Inch by inch, we beat it down. When it finally eased, the barn stood half-ruined, charred beams leaning wrong hay turned to ash. But it stood. And so did we. I sank into the dirt, the world tilting. Skaya's hand found mine and held. Mira and Tova dropped beside us, faces blackened, eyes hollow with exhaustion. We'd won barely. Harlan Voss's torch was a promise. He'd be back. Night settled, heavy stars cold and far through the hanging smoke. I lay beside what remained of the barn. Skaya's scarf cinched tight at my side, blood seeping through. Every breath hurt. Every move sent fire through my ribs. Skaya knelt close, her hand anchoring mine, her gaze refusing to let me slip away. "You gave us a home," she said softly, her Cheyenne accent turning the words into a prayer. "Now stay and keep it." Her fingers cooled my brow, easing the fever burning there. That touch was more than comfort. It bridged two broken hearts, my grief and her hard-won hope. "I don't know if I can," I breathed. "You can," she said. "You will." Days blurred. Pain stitched me to the world, and so did Skaya's hands. She cleaned the wound, changed bandages torn from her own dress, her shape moving in firelight like something sacred. Mira gathered herbs, brewed teas from old teachings that pulled the fever down. Tova hauled water and hummed low tunes that proved beauty still existed. The ranch bore scars, the barn-gutted corral rails, splintered garden choked with ash, but the sisters didn't bend. They rebuilt. Skaya set new boards, sweat-cutting lines along her jaw. Mira cleared Elise Pike's garden, coaxing green from burned soil. Tova roped the horses, her quiet laugh, a spark amid the wreckage. They weren't just fixing wood and dirt, they were stitching something new, a life, a family. From the ashes I watched from the porch, leaning on a cane, healing slow. I wasn't whole, might never be, but I was here, bound to these women by something stronger than grief. One evening, as the prairie went red with sunset, Skaya sat beside me. We didn't speak at first. We watched the light drain from the land. At last, she broke the quiet. "Do you regret it?" Skaya asked, "letting us stay?" I took my time answering. I thought about Elise Pike's grave beneath the cottonwood, about the walls I'd raised and how they'd fallen in a single day, about fire and blood and 3 sisters who'd stood shoulder to shoulder with me like we'd shared a lifetime. "No," I said, and I meant it. She leaned into me, her weight warm and real. "Good," she murmured, "because we're not leaving. The prairie has its ways of warning you." The next morning, a vulture wheeled high overhead wings, cutting slow circles, a sign that Harlan Voss's hunger still prowled near. His shadow rode the wind, a promise waiting for a darker hour. I know he'll return. Men like him always do. They can't abide losing. They can't stand knowing someone defied them and lived. And when he comes back, it'll be with more riders, more guns, more fire. But here's the truth. I'm not the man he faced before. That man was already half buried, just moving through days, waiting for the ground to claim him. These women, this family forged from desperation and flame, woke something in me I thought was gone for good. Maybe it's foolish. Maybe we're only buying time. Still, I'd rather die fighting for something that matters than spend another day in that empty hush I used to call living. You might wonder if I love Skaya, if what sparked between us at the corral was real or just 2 lonely souls grasping for heat. The honest answer, I don't know. Love is a tangled thing, especially after you've lost it once. But I know this: I'd bleed for her. For all of them. And maybe that's enough. The ranch still shows its wounds, blackened boards, broken rails, marks of what we survived. Yet we're rebuilding slow and careful together. Herbs grow tall again in the garden, mingling with what Elise once planted. Tova's laughter carries when the horses play, and Skaya moves through the place like it's always been hers. Not a shelter, but a home. Some nights when the dark settles deep, I still speak to Elise. I tell her about the sisters, about the fight, about how I'm learning to live again instead of just enduring. I like to believe she understands, maybe even sent them to pull me back from the edge. Or maybe that's just a story I tell myself. We all need stories, ways to make sense of our choices, the roads we take. The West tests a person that way. It steals what you love, burns what you build, and asks if you've got the grit to stand back up. 2 years ago, I would have said no. I would have let Voss's fire take it all and called it fate. But now I've got 3 reasons to fight. 3 reasons to rebuild. 3 reasons to believe that redemption might still be possible even for a man who'd given up on it. So we'll face what comes. The next storm, the next gunfight, whatever hell Harlan Voss brings, we'll meet it together on this scarred ground we call home. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories, from our hearts to yours. Thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso Legal, Barra Disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals narration and script development, the emotional tone, editing, and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.